All right, hey guys, I'm getting ready to head out to work. Actually, somebody is picking me up today. So, as I get ready, I just want to share something. So, this book I took a peek at last night. Um, you Don't Really Know Me by Terry Apter. So, she's saying that it says why mothers and daughters fight and how they both can win. So, basically, she's saying mothers and daughters fight every 2.5 days. And I'm thinking, wow, really? Where does that come from? Because that wasn't my experience growing up. So I was thinking about this, and the way that I grew up, I didn't really fight with my mother. There was one time we had like this indirect blow, um, but we didn't really fight. And then for me, the way I dealt with my mother is she was busy with her mother and the issues. I just lived my own life. That's pretty much how I dealt with my mother. My girlfriends, I was raised up in the bow and arrow shoots. A lot of weekends we did the bow and arrow shoots. So I was always around other people. I think that took kind of the edge off too, because I was always with other people and I had a sense of community. But like my friends would fight with their mothers. Like my friend Michelle and her mom from the shoot. I remember sleeping over one day and they were really rich. They had a lot of money and she had a waterbed and a pool and we used to swim, blast the music and swim at her house all the time. They had a bow and arrow shop downstairs in their basement. So we hung out a lot. We watched movies together. We sat on the couch, just watched movies, ate chips. So we hung out in the car. Well, my father's truck. We just turned the, radio on and hung out. But I remember going to her house and her mother fought a lot. And I thought, this is so weird. I would not be allowed to fight with my mother. I mean, if I fought with my mother, I would be in big trouble. So one day I'm over there and she's in the bathroom and she calls her mother a bitch, the B word. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, right? So they get in this fight, and then a few minutes later, it seems like they're okay. They just move on, they're okay. Same thing with my other friend Chris in Epsom. Her and her mother one day, huge fight. Chris calls her the B word, and I'm thinking, what is going on? I've never seen this, right? And then it wasn't long after that, after the abortion with my boyfriend Randy, that I was dating my boyfriend Mike. And I always told my husband Mike was my ticket to freedom. That's pretty much what he was. After this whole thing happened with the abortion with my boyfriend Randy, I had broken up with him. I had asserted myself, and that was the right decision. I was like, you know what, you just tricked me with this condom that broke, take me home. And I had already tried breaking up with him, and this time I was like, yeah, I definitely am sticking to my guns this time. And so I had already liked this guy Mike, and Mike and I started dating, and he was my freedom because at that time, because of what happened, my parents were trying to uh, now get involved in my life after, dating was okay and having my freedom was okay. My mother especially was trying to control me now. So I wouldn't, I had already had my freedom. I already had asserted myself. Um, so me and Mike were hanging out in Epsom. We were going to the pizza place. We were going to the arcade over there with my friends. It was like we all were a group of friends, my friend Chris and others, and so by then we were going to see like horse shows or car shows in the mud. And by September, before I even knew I was pregnant, we were already hanging out. I was skipping school, hitchhiking, just totally going my own way. I think I had lost a lot of self-esteem with the forced abortion, but also I had my freedom. And I believe it was my way of breaking free from my mother. So my uncle Bill was like, "Oh my goodness, Melissa, Lee had to chase you all the time. She had to pull you out of the video store. She had to watch you all the time. And my mother would do that. She would go to the video arcade with her friend Judy from the shoot and be like, "Come on, Melissa." And she would like drag me out of the video arcade store in front of my friends. And that was embarrassing. Or she would go to my school. Like, she found out Mike was at the school dance with me, so she went into the dance and pulled me out of there. So yeah, like everywhere I went with this guy Mike, she was trying to pull me away from him, which at the time made me even stronger to be with this guy. So there was definitely a battle of the wills there. And my mother worked at the school, and she was like, she worked in the kitchen and handed out food to a lot of my friends. So my mother was there, but not there in many ways. So I was like, you know what? I already had my phone in my room and I was talking to him, and then he was at my window and he broke into my family's home, and it was just a crazy time. And looking back, I really think I was just asserting my independence. And it wasn't my mother that changed my mind at all about this guy. It was me. It was, he had broken into my friend's house, my good friend Chris's house, best friend, and stole her father's radar detector. And I could actually at that time care more about my friend than I could about me at that time. So because of that loyalty I had with Chris since like second grade. I mean, we grew up playing Charlie Angels, and we were best friends in school. Uh that loyalty to her is what kept me away from him after that. And then so I'm just looking at all this stuff lately. I'm like, okay, I've had catty woman at work. I've had my mother-in-law recently start trouble with me. So once I said to my mother, so once I had kids, I was like, okay, this is, don't be bugging me in the labor room. I'm trying to have my son. Don't be telling me what to do as a mother. These are my kids. I will be doing what I think is right with my kids. They're not yours. You had your turn. I look back and think, okay, that was definitely me, trying to grow up and mature and be like, don't tell me what to do. Don't be controlling. I think my husband went through the same thing with his mother. He had some trauma from her. So his was more not so direct. His was more, oh, I'm just busy or whatever. And I think about me with my boys. I haven't really had drama with my boys. It's been a pretty simple relationship. I mean, they're boys, they're easy. There's really no drama. It's just kind of, they love their mom, and uh, that's all there is to it. There's not that same connection as there is with if I had a daughter. And for some reason, God did not give me a daughter, and I don't know why. And I used to be scared. I mean, I wanted a girl, but I used to be scared. Um, After my last son, I did want a girl. I didn't really care about having a girl at first, but after my last son, I was like, oh, I'd love to have a girl. But the neighborhood girls here, they have been great. They are just so much fun. But I wasn't given a girl for a reason, and I don't think I would have been as equipped to deal with a girl with everything I went through. That's kind of how I look at it. Not until now would I have been more equipped to deal with a girl. But I look at these women at work. Some of them are critical. I work with in the past, I work with girls, women now, pretty positive. That's kind of what you want. You want women who already have asserted themselves and know themselves. So I think this is something that you have to go through as women. You have to assert yourself. You have to do that with your mother-in-law too. When my husband's mother used to attack me, my husband didn't really do much. He was just like, oh, the drama. I don't want to deal with my mother. And I think that's how a guy deals with it. But I think a woman does need to deal with her mother-in-law. I think she does. I think she needs to put those boundaries up, just like she did with her mother. And I think there needs to be some lines drawn in the sand of this is my life and you're not going to run it. And you had your life and you were able to do what you wanted in your life. And I see this too with the way my mother and my grandmother were. My mother couldn't really speak up really to her mother. She couldn't. So her mother kind of ran her all over. My mother would draw a line to a point. She'd say, I have to get home, for my dad and make dinner. There were some boundaries, but not enough. And the same, I think, my husband's mother, she put up with a lot from her mother too. Her mother, Ruth, would, come over all the time. And the way she dealt with it, she would say, she would, say things in a way that was indirect, but when she left, she would be like, no, 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 no. Same with my mother, So I think I tend to be simple. I think it's because I've had men around me so much, and I tend to be very direct. I tend to be like, if you're going to say something to me, I'm going to directly tell you what I think. And so I don't like to spend too much time venting, you know, whatever to other people, to my husband or whatever. Um, so that's kind of how I've dealt with my mother relationships, where back in the generation before, they couldn't really say something to their mother. They were stuck in the family dynamics. They couldn't really say something because maybe they were having a problem with their mother, but they could go to their sisters. Like my mother had her sisters to talk to. Same with my mother-in-law, she talked to her sisters. So it can be tricky though, because if your sisters are close to your mother, as in some cases I've seen, then you really can't talk to them. And so it's a really tricky thing, the mother and daughter relationship. But I think you're better off to get it out in the teen years. Like once I did say to my mother, this was after the abortion, the forced abortion. She was like, oh, Mike had given me a diamond ring. And he had wanted me to marry him. And she's like, oh, well, maybe you'll marry him. And then I'm like, well, this is what happened. So I would share and open up my heart. And then she would go and be like, oh, well, no, you can't date him. And that frustration of the back and forth, we were hanging out laundry, and I ended up telling her that I hated her. So then she went and told my father on me, a private conversation. She went and told my father. He just heard that I was, being, in his opinion, disrespectful to my mother, which wasn't the case. There was a whole lot going on that he didn't have a conversation with me about, and just, grabbed me by the hair and pulled me, up from my bedroom into the kitchen and threw me against the door. And my mother's like, oh, that's enough, dear. And so, years later, she would say, oh, you deserved it. Um, no, I didn't deserve it. She actually was very provoking. But, anyways, I mean, that was one of the times I did express myself to my mother. And then after that, I mean, I really, again, living my own life, not really close to her. At one point, I put a boundary up with my kids and said, not right now, not right now. We were on the phone together and she wanted to come over again and, take a shower or something with my sons there. And I'm like, no, not right now. You know, you're not going to be in my life right now. And she's like, oh, fine. It doesn't bother me at all. So, there's been the back and forth. And it's just relieving to see a book that says, mothers and daughters tend to fight. And I think you're really better off to be able to communicate with your daughters, get to the heart of it when they're young and say, what's going on, and talk and talk and talk. So I think the communication is really the key with your daughters. Okay, that's what I got for this morning, guys. Thanks for joining me.